Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So once you begin to self-host applications in your home lab, you might not be aware that it's a lot easier if you're working from a Linux desktop as opposed to a Windows desktop. So today I'm going to try to demonstrate some basic options available in an Ubuntu desktop that can enhance your usability. And Windows users who are interested in moving to Linux are often overwhelmed by all of the choices. And there's seemingly an endless choice of Linux distros if you've looked out there. So the important thing to understand is that Linux is about having choices. And in Linux, you can change just about everything about the operating system. And one of my favorite comments is, I like to say that Linux gives you more than enough rope to hang yourself. And so in contrast to that, Windows is designed to provide a consistent user interface with increasingly fewer options to prevent the end user from incorrectly configuring the system or making it unusable. And Windows branding of Windows, or Microsoft's branding of Windows, is all about providing a user interface that reflects years of experience studies. And individual use cases or specialized requirements are really not a factor in the design of the Windows interface. So the best Linux distros for Windows users are typically Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Zorin OS, and Pop OS, and I'm sure there are others. So here I have a very basic installation of Ubuntu in a LXD VM. And what this video is going to be about is how we can make modifications to a standard Linux distro in order to make it operate differently or provide features that you might desire. In my example Ubuntu configuration here, I made it look a lot like Windows 11, and you can even see that there's a Windows 11 icon down here. When I click on it, it provides a menu that pops up that looks remarkably like what you find typically in Windows 11. And then if you go click on all apps over here, it will give you the list of applications, which is equivalent to opening the app drawer, but some people might like that better. If we move down here to the lower right, it brings up the calendar. And then this is where the menu is a little different from Windows. You come up and you have the typical Linux menus here with settings, and all of those things are pretty much going to be standard from standard Ubuntu. So let's go ahead and start from scratch and see what types of things we can do. Here's an Ubuntu desktop that I created in a LXD virtual machine. And this particular desktop is so lean that it really doesn't have very many applications installed. And in fact, if we click on the app drawer, you can see that there isn't even a web browser loaded in this particular version of Ubuntu. So we're going to go ahead and launch a terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and make that terminal screen a bit larger font-wise with a Shift Control Plus a couple of times, just so that you can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and spread that out just a little bit wider. One of the reasons why many people do not prefer Ubuntu is because Canonical is placing more and more of the default applications into snaps. And snaps run a little bit slower, but there are some advantages to them. But nonetheless, some people do not like snaps. So if we have Ubuntu 22.04 and a standard installation, we're going to go ahead and do a sudo apt, or we can't actually do a sudo apt, we'll have to do a sudo snap remove Firefox. So we're going to reinstall Firefox, but we're going to reinstall it as an apt package. And here it says that the snap Firefox is not installed, and that's only because I started from a really generic installation. On your system, you'll probably have it installed as a snap. Next, I want to install the Mozilla repository, which is for the Firefox application, and that way we're guaranteed to get the latest version of Firefox whenever it does installs or updates. And then the next thing that we need to do is run this short script here, which will go ahead and place the priority of the apt package to be higher than the priority of the snap package, guaranteeing that from now on it goes ahead and installs the apt package and not the snap package. Now that we've done this, I can do a sudo apt update, and then I'll do a sudo apt install on Firefox. Tell it yes to continue, and it goes ahead and installs the latest version of Firefox, and this one is coming from the Mozilla repository. Since we've done a new installation of Ubuntu here, we're also going to do a sudo apt upgrade, and it will upgrade the packages that are needing upgrade, and you can see here that there are a couple libraries that it's performing an upgrade on. So it's always good when you have a new installation to do a sudo apt update and then a sudo apt upgrade. At this point, we have our system almost upgraded, and we have the Firefox installed as an apt package. A few of those updates required a system restart, and this may be the case for you as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and start our new version of Firefox by clicking on the app drawer here and clicking on Firefox. When Firefox launches, it will come up with the initial information here, and I'm going to go ahead and just say skip this step and skip this step, and again skip again, and just start browsing. So we now have our Firefox web browser up. I'm going to come over here and right click on it in the menu and say add to favorites, and that way it is a favorite. And I don't really particularly like being blinded here, so we're going to go ahead and go over to the settings. We're going to go to appearance, and we're going to pick the dark theme. And now we can launch our Firefox again, and we should end up with the dark theme. And this is one of the things that people also do not like, is they don't like, it says Firefox is already running. It hadn't completely shut down. So I'll wait a second, and now I'll click on it again, and it should launch correctly. And now we have Firefox with the dark theme. And by the way, that's one of the other reasons why people don't like running Firefox as a snap, because it may or may not follow the system theme, and had we changed to the dark theme, we might still have a light theme in Firefox. Going back to our terminal, there's going to be a few tools that we're going to want to install if they're not already installed, and one of them is sudo apt install net-tools, and if you watch the channel frequently, you'll see that I install that one. Another one we might want to install is Git, to be able to get things from the GitHub site. Another is wget, to be able to do downloads from the command line from web pages. And then, just in case, we'll maybe want to install the Nano editor. If it's not already installed in standard Ubuntu, it should already be installed. So now I can do a -y at the end, and that will go ahead and install all of these application packages without prompting me, except for my password. In order to make modifications for the visual appearance of our Ubuntu, we're going to want to install another set of tools. One is called GNOME Tweaks, another is GNOME Shell Extensions, and finally GNOME Shell Extensions Preferences. So we go ahead and install those as well. So what exactly is GNOME? Well, simply put, GNOME stands for the GNU Network Object Model Environment, and it is opposed to being pronounced GNOME with the silent G, it's pronounced GNOME, and it is a graphical user interface for the applications on many Linux desktops, including Ubuntu. So now we want to go to our Firefox browser, and we want to go ahead and search for GNOME extensions. And once we search for GNOME extensions, we want to go ahead and click on the first return value, which is GNOME Shell Extensions, and that brings us to the GNOME Shell Extensions page. On this page, there's an option up here that says click to install the browser extension. If we go ahead and do that, we can say continue to extension, go ahead and add, and say OK. Once that's done, you refresh the current page and you will get an error that says an unexpected error occurred, and that seems to be a bug in Ubuntu 22.04. To resolve this problem, we're going to go ahead and log out of our Ubuntu desktop here, and then we're going to log back in. Once you're logged back in, go ahead and relaunch the Firefox web browser, and when it comes back up, go ahead and type in extensions.gnome.org. And when it comes up to that page, you'll see you no longer have the big red error that says an unexpected error has occurred. However, you do have this one that says your native host connector does not support the following APIs, and it says v6. This is related to IPv6, and it is not required. The reason I'm getting the error is because I don't have IPv6 configured here. But at this point, our GNOME extensions are working perfectly and can be managed from the Firefox web browser. One of the first extensions that I like to add is going down here and clicking on Extension List. The Extension List extension gives you a list of your extensions and a way to manage them from your top panel. So I go ahead and click on, I say install the extension, and now we have a little puzzle piece up here on our top bar, which lists all of the extensions that we have currently installed. And those that have a way to configure them have a little bit of a gear to the right of them, and you can configure them in that way. So there really are a lot of great extensions you can add. If you go back to the extensions menu, one of the searches you should do is for IP. And IP Finder is one of the ones that I like, and we can go ahead and turn it on and install it. And then at the screen top here, you can see it says it's loading IP addresses, and it has got, if you click on it, it will tell you more or less where your location is according to your WAN address. The other one, if we go back to extensions and we go ahead and type in IP again, is one that is called LAN IP address. And this one I like to turn on and install it. And then you have to the left of it a LAN IP address, which shows you what your address is on your local LAN. So that's also kind of convenient. If I go ahead and head up back to the extensions list and then also do a search for one called applications, if I can spell here, applications, there's an applications menu. You can click on it and turn it on. And then you have an applications menu up here, just so you can find everything in a different way than you do otherwise for going to the app drawer. Head on up to the extensions menu again, and we can search for Dash to Dock. And the Dash to Dock option is an add-on for the GNOME shell as well. And we go ahead and click on it and go ahead and turn it on and install it. And by default, it goes ahead and puts your menu at the bottom of the screen. We have all sorts of settings that we can do on it. That will be visual settings, as we'll see shortly. Before we go into the details for Dash to Dock, you'll recall that earlier we installed this extensions manager as a GNOME extension. So we have an extension manager for the extension manager. But there's also another nice program that you can install. If you bring up a terminal and you do a sudo apt install on gnome-shell-extension-manager, that will go ahead and install a native extension manager. And if we go down here to the app drawer now and launch extension manager, we have this also very nice extension manager. The main difference you're going to notice between this one and the one up here is the one up here lets you manage the extensions that's installed. This one lets you browse for new extensions, so you can do so without having to go access the web page through Firefox. It's just another alternative. So let's look at some of the things that I like to do with Dash to Dock. If we go to the top of the screen and click on Installed Extensions, and then go click the gear next to Dash to Dock, that brings up the Dash to Dock configuration screen. And looking from the top, we've got 4 tabs: Position and Size, Launchers, Behavior, and Appearance. To begin with, on Position and Size, you can choose to display the dock on all monitors or on a particular monitor. You can choose to display it on the left, the bottom, the top, or the right. Eat your hearts out, Windows users. And then we have Intelligent Auto Hide, and what that does is, like right now, for example, we don't see the dock at the bottom of the screen because the screen that we're looking at here is a little bit too low. If I inch it up, that comes back into view. If I turn off Intelligent Auto Hide, then it will display the dock at all times. So I'll go ahead and leave Intelligent Auto Hide on, and I'll move this up just a bit to display it. The next thing we have is a change in the icon size, and you can go ahead and make that anything that you want, and it goes ahead and alters the size of the icons that you see in the dock according to whatever your preferences are. I usually like something right around 32. Next thing we have is we have the launchers section. In the launchers section, we can show open Windows previews. We have several options here for other types of things. One of my favorite is the show applications icon, which is the one for the app drawer down here. I like to move that to the beginning of the dock. And so now my app drawer here is at the beginning of the dock as opposed to at the end of the dock. Dash to Dock really provides an awful lot of options. If we scroll down here, we can also decide whether or not we want to display devices, whether they're mounted or not, or only if they're mounted. Things like your CD drives or your DVD drives. And then we have a number of other options too. So let's go over to the behavior screen. This one's kind of interesting because you get to control what you want your clicks to do. That is to cycle between windows, raise windows, that sort of thing. What you want your scroll action to do if you set that up for anything. And then appearance. So appearance is kind of interesting because you can say shrink the dock, and it will go ahead and shrink the dock accordingly to the number of icons that are on it. Or you can go ahead and just have it display as its default. This show overview on startup, I usually like to turn this one off because what that does when you log in is it goes ahead and shows you your workspaces and gives you an option to join between one workspace to another workspace. And then this is whether or not you want to use the built-in theme or if you want to use a customized theme. And you can customize the dash color here if you want. You can customize the opacity. So some people like to change the opacity, and by doing so, we can go ahead and change this to dynamic, or not dynamic, but rather fixed. And I can go ahead and change this to make the dash to dock toolbar a little bit more transparent so that I can see the background through it. There are lots of other customizations you can make with your dock, and Dash to Dock is just one of the applications or one of the extensions that allows you to modify it. There are others as well. So I could go on and talk about a lot of different extensions you could install, but you have the browse option either through Firefox that we configured or through this extension where you can search for those extensions. And so as a reminder, we installed this applications menu. We installed the extension manager over here. We installed the one that shows you your LAN address and also the one that shows you your WAN address. So now let's go over and do something a little bit different. One of the things that I dislike about Ubuntu and that I like about Linux Mint is the fact that Ubuntu uses the Nautilus file manager by default, whereas Linux Mint uses the Nemo file manager by default. And I'm going to show you how to uninstall the Nautilus file manager and how to install the Nemo file manager. So when you bring up your file manager, this file manager that you see here is Nemo by default, or not Nemo, but Nautilus. If we do an about files here, it just comes up and says, I'm files, this is what I am, but it's actually Nautilus, and I'm going to go ahead and dismiss that. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and these will be in the show notes, is I'm going to do a sudo apt purge Nautilus and then GNOME shell extension desktop icons. And so what that will do is it will pull out the associations related to Nautilus. And in fact, I actually have a document out there on the discussion forum that is entitled Installing Nemo File Manager, and it goes through these exact steps. So the next thing I'm going to do is do a sudo apt install on Nemo with the -y so that it doesn't prompt me, and that goes ahead and installs the Nemo file manager in place of the file manager, the Nautilus file manager that we had installed. Now that Nemo is installed, I'm going to execute 3 commands here to set up the defaults for how Nemo is supposed to manage files on the desktop and making those kind of a default. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit a file in the AutoStart group to set up for Nemo desktop. This can also be done through the GUI, but I kind of prefer to do things from the command line, and it teaches you more about what you're doing. And this particular one goes ahead and sets Nemo desktop to automatically run. We're going to do a Control O and enter and a Control X to exit the Nano editor. And at this point, we're going to log off and log back into our Ubuntu desktop in order to have these changes take effect. Now we go ahead and log back into my account on this Ubuntu desktop. And once we log in, we should have Nemo set up as the default file manager. And notice that there's no icon down here for Nemo, but we go ahead and click on the Show Applications, and you'll notice that there is a Files application. We go ahead and click on it, then we'll right-click on the dock and say Pin to the dash. and that will pin it to that dock. And now if we do a help and we do an about, you can see that we're running the Nemo file manager, and it will update automatically, as is the case with all other applications installed in Linux. Now here is something very interesting. We can go ahead and go down to our documents folder, and you see that I'm in Scott Documents. You can also come over here and click on this location entry, and it will go ahead and toggle that and give me a location entry. So on the channel, one of the things I talk about is that you can go ahead and do an SMB : / say VMS Cloud as an example, which is a node on my network. And since I have local DNS, it will go ahead and recognize that. I could provide my username and password, and it would go ahead and connect to that SMB service. You can also get to that by clicking on Network, and it will notice VMS Cloud out there. Another option that I have is that I could connect via SFTP protocol. And so that's Simple File Transfer Protocol. And I could do something like do an SFTP : VMS rain. And then it will go ahead and tell me that it could not display it because the connection failed. That is more than likely the fact that it's not doing my DNS here, so that's okay. I do 172.16.1.51, and that should go ahead and go there. And I can go ahead and enter my username, and I can go ahead and enter my password, and it should go ahead and connect to that SFTP service, and there you are, it does. So this is a real advantage because it's very easy to connect to those. And of course I can toggle my location entry back, and it simply says I'm connected to 172.16.1.51. Something else that's really nice about this is that I could go into my home directory, my Scott directory out there, and I could do a right click and I can say open as root, and it will go ahead and prompt me for my password, and it will go ahead and open an elevated privileges window. You can see here, so this particular file manager connected to the Scott folder over there is actually connected as root, and so therefore I can do root operations. Overall, Nemo is really a pretty fantastic file manager. Other types of things I can do is I can right click and I can go ahead and create new folders, create new documents, that sort of thing. I could actually go just do a right click on this LXD images here, and I could say open that in a new window, and it will go ahead and open that particular folder in another window. And in general, all the options are really fantastic. So I used Ubuntu as an example of a Linux distribution where we have several options to configure and customize the operating system to work more in the way that you would have it work. And this would certainly run with any Linux operating system distro that you can think of, but I showed a few simple options. This is by no means an exhaustive list of things you can do, and as a matter of fact, when it comes down to it, if it was an exhaustive list, this video probably would have lasted 40 some odd hours, at which point in time I would have fallen out of my chair and you would have fallen asleep. So anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm hoping to build the channel a lot more in 2024. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and to hit the notification bell and tell everybody you know about the channel. And with that in mind, we'll see you all next time.